The transport shuttle landed softly on the glass platform of the Galactic Academy of Unified Species. The doors opened with a quiet hiss, and Park stepped out into the alien world for the first time. She was 17 years old. She had black hair that fell past her shoulders and dark brown eyes that looked around with quiet curiosity. She wore the standard Academy uniform, blue and silver, which felt strange against her skin. Everything felt strange here. The air was too clean. The gravity was too light. She felt like she might float away if she didn't concentrate on keeping her feet on the ground. The academy was beautiful in a way that made her feel small. The buildings were made of something that looked like crystal but wasn't. They rose high into the purple sky, catching the light of 3 distant suns. Bridges of light connected the towers. Gardens floated in the air, held up by technology she didn't understand. But didn't look at the buildings for long. She was too busy looking at the students. They were everywhere, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, and none of them looked like her. Some were tall and thin, with skin that glowed from inside. Others were short and covered in hard shells like insects. Some floated instead of walked. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. There were creatures made of what looked like living stone, and creatures that seemed to be made of nothing but light and shadow. And all of them were looking at her. Could feel their fear. It hung in the air like a smell. As she walked forward, the crowd parted around her. Students moved away, pressing themselves against walls and each other. A small creature with 6 legs actually turned and ran in the other direction. She was used to this by now. She had read the briefing documents before coming here. She knew what they called her planet. Earth was a Category 9, the gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was poisonous. The wildlife was savage. The weather could kill without warning. And the dominant species, humans, were the most terrifying of all. Humans were persistent predators. They didn't run fast, but they never stopped running. They healed from wounds that would kill other species. They could eat almost anything. They could survive in deserts and frozen wastelands and dense jungles. They kept fighting even when they were hurt, even when they were afraid, even when all hope was gone. To the galaxy, humans were monsters from a nightmare world, and was the first one to ever attend the Galactic Academy. She had volunteered for this. Earth's government had started a new exchange program, trying to build better relations with the galactic community. They needed someone young, someone smart, someone who could represent humanity in a positive way. Had written a long essay about cultural understanding and peace between species. She had passed dozens of tests and interviews. Out of millions of applicants, she had been chosen. Now, walking through the silent crowd of terrified aliens, she wondered if she had made a mistake. A tall figure approached her. He had gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. He wore the robes of a professor. "Park," he said. His voice was deep and had a strange echo to it. "I am administrator. Welcome to the academy." "Thank you," said. She kept her voice soft. She had learned not to speak too loudly around other species. They found it threatening. "Your room has been prepared. Your schedule has been uploaded to your personal device. If you have questions, you may contact the Student Services Office." Administrator paused. "I must be honest with you, Miss Park. Many here are uncomfortable with your presence. I ask for your patience as we all adjust." Nodded. "I understand. I'll do my best not to cause any problems." "See that you don't." Administrator turned and walked away without another word. Found her room on the 7th floor of the residential tower. It was small but clean, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a window that looked out over the floating gardens. One side of the room was already decorated with soft fabrics and glowing crystals. The other side was empty. She had a roommate. The roommate arrived an hour later. Her name was Myra, and she was about height, with skin so thin and clear that you could see through it. You could see her bones, pale blue and delicate. You could see her organs, soft shapes moving gently inside her. You could see her 3 hearts beating in a nervous rhythm. When Myra saw, all three hearts started beating faster. "You're the human," Myra said. Her voice was high and musical like wind chimes. "I'm," said. She smiled without showing her teeth. She had learned that smiles with teeth looked like attack warnings to most species. "It's nice to meet you." Myra stayed near the door. Her hands, long and thin with too many fingers, gripped the frame. "They made me room with you. I didn't volunteer." "I'm sorry," said honestly. "I know this must be scary for you." "Scary," Myra laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You're from a planet where the rain can burn your skin, where the ground shakes and opens up to swallow cities, where animals hunt each other for food." She shuddered. "And you're the apex predator of that world." Sat down on her bed slowly, trying to make herself look small. "I'm also a student who's very far from home and doesn't know anyone here. I like reading and music and cooking. I've never hurt anyone in my life." Myra didn't move. Reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "Do you want some chocolate? It's from Earth. It's sweet." "Is it poisonous?" "Not to most species. I checked." Myra hesitated for a long moment. Then slowly, she crossed the room and took a piece of chocolate from the box. She put it in her mouth. Her three hearts slowed down just a little. "It's good," she admitted. "I know, right?" That night they talked for hours. Myra asked questions about Earth and answered them honestly. Yes, the gravity was heavy. Yes, humans ate dead animals. Yes, there were creatures on Earth that could kill you with a single bite. But there was also beauty. Oceans that sparkled under the sun. Mountains that touched the clouds. Forests full of singing birds. By morning, Myra's hearts had settled into a calm rhythm. She wasn't friend yet, but she wasn't just afraid anymore either. It was a start. But in a laboratory 3 buildings away, someone else was watching Park's arrival. Doctor, the Academy's head, stood at his window with all 4 eyes fixed on the human girl's residential tower. His mandibles clicked together in a pattern that meant deep thought. A living right here at his academy. The research possibilities were endless. He turned to his computer and began to write a proposal. The title was simple: Subject Acquisition Request Human Female Juvenile. The nightmare was only beginning. Doctor had spent 40 years of his life studying organisms. It was his passion. It was his obsession. Other scientists thought he was strange for being so interested in such dangerous creatures, but he didn't care. To him, there was nothing more fascinating in the entire universe than life forms that survived on worlds that should be impossible. His laboratory was filled with specimens. Preserved creatures from a dozen different floated in tanks of clear liquid. A spider-like thing from 442b. A scaled predator from the swamps of 667. See the skeleton of something that had once swam in the acid oceans of HD 80 5512b. Each specimen had cost a fortune to acquire. Retrieval teams had died to bring them here. But humans were different. Humans were special. Doctor had files on humans going back decades. He had studied their biology from medical records and research papers. He knew that their bodies were filled with iron-rich blood, the same iron that made their planet's surface red with rust. He knew that they breathed an atmosphere that was 20% pure oxygen, a gas so reactive that it would burn most other organic life forms from the inside out. He knew that their immune systems were so aggressive that they could fight off diseases that would wipe out entire species. He knew all of this from data, but data was not the same as observation. And now there was a human here, a living, breathing human walking through the halls of his academy. He could observe her every day. He could study how she moved, how she ate, how she responded to different environments. But observation wasn't enough. Doctor wanted more. He began following. Not physically, of course. That would be too obvious. Instead, he accessed the Academy's security system. He watched her through cameras. He tracked her movements through the building's sensors. He monitored her vital signs through the health chip that all students were required to have implanted. She was remarkable. Her resting heart rate was 70 beats per minute, slow and steady like a machine. Her body temperature stayed at exactly 37 degrees Celsius, no matter what the environment around her was. When she walked into a cold room, her body simply generated more heat. When she walked into a warm room, her body released the excess through her skin. Perfect thermal regulation. And then there were her eyes. Doctor watched the footage of in the library one evening. She was reading a book, her face calm and focused. But when another student walked past behind her, something changed. Her head turned slightly. Her eyes tracked the movement without her even seeming to notice. It was a predator response. Her brain was constantly monitoring her environment, watching for threats, calculating distances and angles. She wasn't being aggressive. She wasn't even aware she was doing it, but her body was always ready to react. Doctor's assistant found him watching the footage late one night. Was young and nervous with pale yellow skin and large dark eyes. He was a good assistant, careful and thorough, but he lacked imagination. "Sir," said hesitantly, "you've been watching the human for 3 weeks now. The Academy Council is starting to ask questions." "Let them ask," Doctor said without looking away from the screen. "They don't understand what we have here." "She's a student, sir. She has rights under the Protection Treaty." Doctor finally turned to look at his assistant. "Do you know how many researchers have tried to study human biology directly? Do you know how many have failed? The humans guard their people carefully. They don't let outsiders experiment on them. The data we have is all second-hand, all filtered through their own scientists." "Perhaps for good reason," said quietly. "Don't be foolish. Science requires direct observation. How can we understand them if we can't study them properly?" Doctor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement. "Think of what we could learn, their healing abilities, their pain tolerance, their immune responses. We could advance medical science by centuries." "Sir, what exactly are you planning?" Doctor smiled. On his species, a smile meant something different than it did on humans. It was a sign of hunger. Meanwhile, was adjusting to life at the academy as best she could. Classes were difficult, not because the material was too hard, but because the other students refused to work with her. In group projects, she always ended up alone. In discussions, she was always ignored. The professors tried to be fair, but even they were uncomfortable around her. One professor actually wore a protective suit to class every day just because was in the room. The loneliness was the worst part. Had friends back on Earth. She had a family who loved her. She had a home where people smiled at her without fear in their eyes. Here, she had nothing. Just empty hallways and whispered conversations that stopped when she appeared. Myra was the only exception. After their first night together, the girl had slowly started to relax around. They ate meals together. They studied together. Sometimes they just sat in their room and talked about nothing important. "Why did you come here?" Myra asked one evening. "Really, you must have known what it would be like." "Thought about it. Because someone had to be first. If humans and other species are going to live together someday, someone has to show that it's possible. And you wanted to be that someone." "I wanted to try." Myra's 3 hearts beat in a soft, synchronized rhythm. "That's either very brave or very stupid." "Maybe both," admitted with a small smile. A few days later, found a note under her door. It was on official academy paper, with the academy seal printed at the top. "You have been selected for a routine medical screening," the note read. "All exchange students are required to complete this process. Please report to Laboratory 7C tomorrow at the 3rd bell." Read the note twice. She didn't remember anything about medical screenings in her orientation documents, but she also didn't want to cause problems. She was trying so hard to be a good representative for humanity. She didn't want to start refusing official requests. She showed the note to Myra. "That's strange," Myra said, her forehead wrinkling. "I've never heard of Laboratory 7C. Most medical things happen in the health center." Maybe it's different for exchange students. Maybe. Myra didn't sound convinced. Do you want me to come with you? Shook her head. I'm sure it's fine. It's probably just a blood test or something. That night she went to sleep thinking about home, about her mother's cooking, about her father's bad jokes, about her little brother who always stole her snacks. She didn't know that across campus, Doctor was preparing a syringe filled with bright green liquid. She didn't know that the substance inside was called Compound V17, a synthetic neurotoxin designed to cause maximum pain in carbon-based life forms. She didn't know that tomorrow, her life would change forever. She slept peacefully, dreaming of Earth. It was the last peaceful sleep she would have for a long time. Laboratory 7C was in the oldest part of the academy, far from the bright halls where students walked and laughed. Had to take 3 different elevators to get there, each one going deeper into parts of the building she had never seen before. The walls down here were gray instead of white. The lights were dimmer. The air smelled like chemicals and something else she couldn't name. She found the laboratory at the end of a long corridor. The door was thick metal, not the usual glass and light that the academy seemed to love. A small screen next to the door beeped when she approached. Park, a mechanical voice said. Identity confirmed, please enter. The door slid open with a heavy sound. Inside, the laboratory was large and cold. Metal tables lined the walls, covered with equipment she didn't recognize. Screens displayed data in languages she couldn't read. In the center of the room was a single examination table, padded and clean, with bright lights pointed at it from above. Doctor stood next to the table. He was wearing a white coat over his normal clothes, and his 4 eyes were all focused on her. "Ah, Miss Park," he said. His voice was friendly, but something about it made uncomfortable. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Walked to the examination table slowly. Her instincts were telling her something was wrong, but she couldn't figure out what. Everything looked professional. Everything looked normal. But the way Doctor was looking at her made her skin feel tight. In the corner of the room, she noticed another alien, smaller than Doctor, with yellow skin and nervous eyes. He was holding a tablet and trying very hard not to look at her. "This is my assistant," Doctor said. "He'll be helping with the examination today." "Hello," said Tu. Didn't answer. He just looked at his tablet and pretended to read something. The examination started normally enough. Doctor asked her questions about her health history. He checked her heart rate and blood pressure. He took samples of her blood, which made him pause and stare at the dark red color with fascination. "Remarkable," he murmured. "The iron content is even higher than our records suggested." "Is that a problem?" asked. No, merely interesting." Doctor set the blood sample aside and picked up a small device. "Now I need to check your reflexes. This might feel strange." He touched the device to her knee. A small shock went through her leg and it kicked automatically. Standard reflex test. Had done this dozens of times at doctors' offices on Earth. "Very good," Doctor said. "Very responsive." More tests followed. Eye tracking, hearing, grip strength, temperature sensitivity. Each test seemed normal, but Doctor was taking far more notes than any doctor had ever seen. He recorded everything, every reaction, every measurement, every tiny detail. Finally, after what felt like hours, Doctor set down his instruments and walked to a cabinet on the far side of the room. He opened it and pulled out a syringe. The liquid inside was bright green. It seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. "One last thing," Doctor said, walking back toward her. "This is a contrast agent. It will help us take some internal images. Very standard procedure." Looked at the syringe. Something in her chest felt cold. "I don't remember reading about this in any of the exchange program documents." "It's a new requirement. The Academy Council approved it just last month." Doctor smiled. On his face, with his mandibles and multiple eyes, it looked wrong. "Nothing to worry about." Looked at, the assistant was staring at the floor, his hands shaking slightly. "I'd like to contact the exchange program office first," said, "just to confirm." "I'm afraid that's not possible right now," Doctor said. "The communication systems in this part of the building are under maintenance, but I assure you, everything is in order." He reached for her arm. "Pulled back, I'm not comfortable with this." For a moment, Doctor's expression changed. The friendly mask slipped, and something harder appeared underneath. Then just as quickly it was gone. "Miss Park," he said patiently, "the Academy has rules. All students must complete their medical requirements. If you refuse, there could be consequences for your enrollment." Sat very still. Her heart was beating faster now, and she could feel adrenaline starting to flow through her body. Her instincts were screaming at her to run, to fight, to do something. But she forced herself to stay calm. She was here to represent humanity. She was here to show that humans could follow rules, could cooperate, could be trusted. If she made a scene over a simple medical test, what would that say about her species? "Fine," she said quietly. She held out her arm. Doctor's smile widened. He took her arm, wiped a spot with something cold, and positioned the needle. "You may feel a slight pinch," he said. The needle went in. For 3 seconds, felt nothing. Then the pain hit. It was like fire, like every nerve in her body was being burned from the inside, like someone had replaced her blood with acid and electricity. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She couldn't see anything except white light as her brain tried to process the impossible amount of pain signals flooding through it. Her hands grabbed the examination table. The metal groaned and bent under her grip. A sound came from her throat, not a scream, something deeper, something that humans made when they were hurt beyond words, when their bodies were pushed past the limit of what they could endure. Doctor stepped back, watching with all 4 eyes. He was holding a recording device capturing everything. "Fascinating," he said. "The pain response is even stronger than predicted." Pressed himself against the wall. His skin had gone from yellow to pale gray. "Sir, this isn't right. We should stop." "Don't be ridiculous. The data we're gathering is invaluable." But something was happening, something that Doctor hadn't expected. His body was fighting back. Millions of years of evolution had prepared humans for poison. Earth was full of venomous creatures, toxic plants, deadly bacteria. The human immune system was a weapon designed to identify threats and destroy them. And right now, that weapon was activating. White blood cells flooded toward the injection site. Antibodies formed almost instantly, targeting the foreign compound. Her liver started filtering the toxin from her blood. Her nervous system began adapting, finding ways to process the pain without shutting down. The white fire in her vision started to fade. The pain was still there, still burning through every part of her, but it was becoming bearable. Her brain was adjusting. Her body was winning. Slowly, very slowly, raised her head. She looked at Doctor. Her eyes were red from burst blood vessels. Her face was wet with tears she hadn't noticed crying. Her whole body was shaking, but she was conscious. She was aware. And she was angry. "What did you do to me?" she asked. Her voice was rough and broken, but the words were clear. Doctor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "This is impossible. The compound should have completely incapacitated you for hours." "What did you do?" At that moment, every alarm in the laboratory started screaming at once. The building's central AI had been monitoring vital signs through her health chip. It had watched her heart rate spike to 180 beats per minute. It had recorded her adrenaline levels rising to dangerous heights. It had detected the chemical signature of a known toxin in her bloodstream. And it had made a decision. The human was in danger. The human was a threat. Containment protocol was necessary. The heavy metal door slammed shut with a sound like thunder. Emergency lights began flashing. A calm mechanical voice announced, "Biological threat detected. Laboratory sealed. Security." Doctor spun around. "What? No. Override Authorization 77. Authorization. Containment protocol cannot be during active threat assessment." Ran to the door and pressed his hands against it. It didn't move. "We're locked in. We're locked in with her." Stood up from the examination table. The pain was still there. It would be there for hours yet, maybe days. But humans had learned long ago how to function through pain, how to push it aside, how to keep moving when every nerve in their body was telling them to stop. She took one step forward, then another. Doctor backed away until he hit the wall. "Now, Miss Park," he said, his voice high and trembling, "let's not do anything hasty. This was simply a scientific experiment. You survived. No permanent harm done." Kept walking toward him. Her footsteps echoed in the sealed laboratory. "You poisoned me," she said. "You called me here with lies. You injected me with something that should have killed me. And you filmed it. For science, for the advancement of knowledge." Stopped right in front of him. She was shorter than he was. She was just a teenager, thin and tired and still shaking from the poison in her blood. But in that moment, standing in that sealed laboratory, she looked like exactly what the galaxy had always feared. A predator. A monster. "I am not your experiment," said softly. "I am not your specimen. I am a person." Doctor opened his mouth to say something. He never got the chance. Grabbed the metal tray of instruments from the table next to her and threw it across the room. She wasn't aiming at Doctor. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She just needed to do something with the rage that was burning through her, mixing with the poison still crawling through her veins. The tray hit the wall with a crash that made both aliens scream. Instruments scattered everywhere. A dent appeared in the metal wall where the tray had struck. Doctor made a sound that had never heard before. It was high and wavering, almost like a song. Later, she would learn that it was his species' fear response, a call that their ancestors had used to warn each other of predators. Had curled into a ball in the corner. His yellow skin had turned completely white. He was shaking so hard that could hear his bones rattling. "Please," Doctor whispered, "please don't kill us." Stopped. The rage was still there, hot and bright behind her eyes. Her body was still pumping adrenaline, still preparing for a fight that every cell in her wanted to have. Her hands were clenched so tight that her nails were cutting into her palms. But she was not an animal. She was not a monster. She was Park, daughter of, and Park, sister to Little, who was probably missing her right now. She was a student who liked reading and music. She was a person. She took a breath. It hurt, everything hurt. The poison was still working through her system, sending waves of fire through her muscles and joints. But she breathed anyway, in and out, in and out. "I'm not going to kill you," she said. Her voice was steadier now. "I'm not going to hurt you at all, even though you deserve it." Doctor didn't seem to believe her. He pressed himself harder against the wall, his four eyes wide and fixed on her like she was death itself walking toward him. Outside the laboratory, chaos was spreading through the academy. The AI's alert had reached campus security immediately. Within seconds, armed guards were running toward Laboratory 7C. Within minutes, the entire building was on lockdown. Students were being evacuated. Emergency shields were going up around the laboratory wing. Administrator received the alert in his office. He read it 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. "Biological threat," he murmured. "In lab with the human." He knew immediately what had happened. He had warned to stay away from the human girl. He had seen the way the scientist looked at her, like she was a specimen waiting to be dissected. But he had hoped that professional ethics would be enough to keep in line. He had been wrong. The news spread through the student population like fire. The human is attacking someone. The human has gone crazy. is showing her true nature. Within an hour, every student on campus knew what was happening, or at least what they thought was happening. Myra heard the news in the library. A group of students were huddled around a communication screen, watching the emergency alerts scroll past. "The human finally snapped," one of them said. "I knew it was only a matter of time." "They should never have let her come here," another said. "Belong on their own worlds." Myra pushed through the crowd. "What's happening? Where is?" The students looked at her with something between pity and disgust. Everyone knew she was the human's roommate. Everyone thought she was either brave or stupid for staying in that room every night. "Your friend is in Laboratory 7C, someone told her. "The whole place is sealed. Security is outside, but they won't go in. They're too scared." Myra didn't wait to hear more. She ran. The security team had gathered outside Laboratory 7C. There were 20 of them, all armed with weapons designed to stop dangerous creatures. They had been trained for situations like this, but none of them had actually faced a human before. None of them wanted to be the first. "We should wait for reinforcements," one guard said. "We should use gas," another suggested. "Put everyone inside to sleep. The human might be immune. Their biology is unpredictable." "Then we should." Everyone turned. Myra was pushing through the crowd of guards, her thin body somehow moving past them despite their size. She reached the sealed door and pressed her hands against it. "Can you hear me? Are you okay?" Inside the laboratory, heard her friend's voice. It cut through the fog of pain and anger like a beam of light through dark clouds. Myra, sweet, nervous Myra who had been so scared of her at first. Myra who had slowly become her friend despite everything. Myra who was now outside that door, worried about her. Closed her eyes and breathed again. When she opened them, the predator was gone. Only the girl remained. She walked to the laboratory door. On the inside, there was a control panel that showed who was outside. She could see Myra's face on the small screen, could see the tears in her friend's large eyes. "I'm okay," said loudly, hoping her voice would carry through the thick metal. "I'm not hurt. Well, I am hurt, but I'm alive. I'm okay." "Let her out," Myra demanded, turning to the security guards. "She didn't do anything wrong. I know her." The AI detected a threat. "The threat isn't her. Someone hurt her in there. Can't you understand?" Administrator arrived then, pushing through the crowd with the authority of his position. He took one look at the sealed door, at the crying girl, at his own security team standing around doing nothing. "Open the door," he said. "Sir, the protocol." "I am overriding the protocol. Authorization Prime 1. Open the door now." There was a long pause. Then the AI's voice spoke. "Authorization accepted. Containment protocol ended. Please be advised that biological threat assessment remains active." The door slid open. Stood just inside, swaying slightly on her feet. Behind her, Doctor was still pressed against the wall and was still curled in the corner. Neither of them had been touched. The only damage in the room was the dent in the wall where had thrown the tray. Myra rushed forward and wrapped her thin arms around. It was the first time she had ever touched her human friend. Was so warm, so solid, so alive. "I was so scared," Myra whispered. "I thought they had hurt you. I thought you were dying." "I'm not dying," said. She hugged Myra back gently, careful not to squeeze too hard. "I'm okay, I promise." Security guards rushed past them into the laboratory. They grabbed Doctor and pulled them out. The scientist was still making that high-pitched fear noise, even as they dragged him away. Administrator walked slowly into the laboratory. He looked at the dent in the wall. He looked at the scattered instruments. He looked at the examination table where the human girl had been poisoned. Then he walked to where stood with Myra, and he did something that no administrator had ever done to a student in the Academy's 1,000-year history. He bowed. Miss Park, he said, his voice heavy with shame, I apologize. On behalf of this institution, I apologize. What was done to you was wrong. It was criminal, and we failed to protect you. Looked at him for a long moment. She was still in pain. She was exhausted. She wanted to sleep for 1,000 years. But she remembered why she had come here. She remembered what she was supposed to be. I accept your apology, she said quietly, but I want to know what happens next. Doctor will face justice, I promise you that. And after that, what happens to me? What happens to the next human who comes here? Administrator didn't have an answer. The security team escorted to the medical center, with Myra walking beside her the whole way. Students lined the hallways, watching in silence. Some of them looked scared. Some of them looked guilty. A few of them looked like they might be crying. Ignored them all. She just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, a who had chosen not to become what everyone expected her to be. Behind her, the laboratory was sealed again, this time as a crime scene. The investigation was about to begin. The investigation lasted 3 standard weeks. Representatives came from 17 different species governments. Lawyers arrived from the Galactic Justice Council. Reporters gathered outside the academy gates, trying to get pictures of the human girl who had survived a neurotoxin that should have killed her in minutes. Doctor was questioned for days. At first, he tried to defend his actions. He talked about the importance of scientific research. He talked about the knowledge that could be gained from studying human biology. He talked about how the advancement of medicine sometimes required difficult choices. No one was impressed. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His own recordings showed everything. The lies he had used to get into his laboratory, the injection of compound V17, the way he had watched and documented her pain without any attempt to help her, his own words spoken while she was suffering. Fascinating. The pain response is even stronger than predicted. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all charges. Doctor lost his position at the academy. He lost his research license. He lost his right to practice science anywhere in the known galaxy. He was sentenced to 15 years in a rehabilitation facility, where he would be taught the basic principles of ethics that he had somehow never learned before. His assistant received a lighter sentence. He had been a witness, not a participant, but he had also failed to stop what was happening, and that failure had consequences. He was suspended from scientific work for 5 years and required to complete extensive ethics training. But the investigation didn't end with punishments. It also asked harder questions. How had Doctor been able to do what he did? How had he accessed schedule without authorization? How had he created fake medical orders that looked official? How had he gotten compound V17 into his laboratory in the first place? The answers were uncomfortable. The academy had failed, not just Doctor but the institution itself. There had been no real oversight of laboratory research. There had been no protection for vulnerable students. There had been a general attitude that certain species were worth studying rather than respecting. Administrator stood before the Galactic Council and admitted these failures publicly. We told ourselves we were progressive, he said. We accepted a human into our academy and we thought that was enough. But acceptance is not the same as inclusion. We brought Park here, but we did not protect her. We did not examine our own prejudices. We allowed fear and curiosity to justify cruelty. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched the old administrator bow his head in shame. We must do better, he concluded. Not just for humans, but for all species. The Galactic Academy was founded to bring different peoples together in pursuit of knowledge. We have forgotten that knowledge without compassion is dangerous. We will not forget again. Watched the speech from her hospital bed. The poison had left her body days ago, but the doctors wanted to monitor her recovery. They were amazed at how quickly she was healing. Wounds that would take other species months to recover from were disappearing in days. "Your immune system is remarkable," one doctor told her. "It attacked the toxin so aggressively that there's almost no permanent damage." Almost asked. "There may be some residual nerve sensitivity, occasional pain in your extremities. Nothing serious, but something you'll notice for the rest of your life." A reminder thought, a permanent reminder of what had been done to her. Myra visited every day. She brought food from the dining hall and news from the campus. She told about the students who had started a petition demanding better protection for all exchange students. She told her about the professors who had publicly apologized for their treatment of humans. She told her about the memorial that someone had started outside Laboratory 7C, with flowers and notes expressing support for the human girl. "People feel terrible," Myra said. "They know they treated you badly. They're trying to make up for it." "That's nice," said. She wasn't sure how she felt about it. Part of her was grateful for the support. Another part of her wondered where all these nice people had been when she was eating alone in the dining hall, when she was being avoided in the hallways, when she was walking into a laboratory where a scientist was waiting to hurt her. On the last day of the investigation, Administrator came to visit her personally. "Miss Park," he said, sitting down carefully in the chair next to her bed, "I need to ask you something important, and I want you to answer honestly without thinking about what you're supposed to say." Nodded slowly. "Do you want to go home?" The question hung in the air between them. Had been thinking about it for weeks. Every night when the lights went down and the pain in her nerves flared up, she thought about Earth, about her family, about the heavy gravity that would feel like a hug, about the sun that would warm her face without being filtered through alien shields. She could go home. No one would blame her. After everything that had happened, she had every right to leave and never look back. "If I leave," she said slowly, "what happens to the next human who wants to come here?" Administrator was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Perhaps there won't be a next human. Perhaps your government will decide the risks are too great. And if that happens, nothing changes. Humans stay scary stories, stay monsters." Looked at the old administrator with eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. "I didn't come here to be comfortable. I came here to build a bridge. You can't build a bridge by running away when it gets hard. Even after what was done to you." Thought about Doctor. She thought about his 4 eyes watching her suffer. She thought about his voice saying, "Fascinating," while she was burning from the inside. "Especially after what was done to me," she said, "because now everyone knows it can happen. Now everyone knows there are consequences. Now everyone is paying attention." She smiled slightly. "Maybe this is exactly what needed to happen. Not the pain, but the aftermath, the investigation, the changes. Maybe the bridge needed to break a little before it could be built properly." Administrator looked at her for a long time. Then he stood up and bowed again, even deeper than before. "The Academy would be honored to have you continue your studies here, Miss Park, and I personally promise that you will be protected, not because you are dangerous, but because you are valuable, as a student, as a person, as the first human brave enough to try." Stayed. The years that followed were not easy. She still faced prejudice. She still faced fear. Some students never learned to see her as anything but a monster from a nightmare world. But more and more, things changed. Other humans came to the academy. Then humans started attending other schools across the galaxy. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were established. Slowly, very slowly, the galaxy began to understand that humans were not just survivors of a. They were artists and scientists and philosophers. They loved and dreamed and cried just like everyone else. And at the center of all these changes was the Galactic Academy, where a human studies department was eventually established. Not to study humans as specimens, but to learn from them as partners. The department's founding chair was Professor Park. She was known across the galaxy for her patience and kindness. for her willingness to explain human culture to anyone who asked, for her absolute refusal to let anyone treat her students as anything less than equal. In the corner of her office, she kept a small piece of bent metal. It was a fragment of the instrument tray she had thrown on the day the lab doors sealed themselves, a reminder of the moment she had almost become what everyone expected her to be, a reminder that she had chosen differently. Visitors to her office often asked about the metal. Professor Park would smile and say it was just a piece of history, a reminder that the galaxy could change, that fear could become understanding, that monsters could become friends. And sometimes, late at night, when her office was empty and the stars shone through her window, she would look at that piece of metal and remember. She would remember the pain. She would remember the fear. She would remember the moment when she had stood in a sealed laboratory with the power to destroy the beings who had hurt her. She would remember choosing not to. And she would know that in that choice, more than in anything else she had ever done, she had truly represented humanity. Not the strength, not the resilience, not the ability to survive, but the capacity for mercy. That was the real lesson of the girl. That was what made humans remarkable. They could break you and survive, but they could also choose to spare you. And in the end, that was more terrifying than any monster could ever be.